Playing whack-a-mole in the distribution system of Facebook, of TikTok, this is not what journalists should be doing. If we don't put a public interest tech stack in place, journalists will forever be handcuffed, forever be attacked, and at some point we will not survive. My name is Ressa. I co-founded Rappler in the Philippines. I also am a professor of practice at Columbia University at the Institute of Global Politics. There's a lot of stuff I do. I'll leave it at that. Hope comes from action, especially when you're under attack. When you stand still, when you wail about the moment, then you lose your power. And that's something we've learned in Rappler. I also think that the window is closing very fast for journalists and journalism, right? We're standing on the rubble of the world that was. The old world we lived in is gone. Small news organizations, 1 or 2 people may survive. Corporate news organizations will survive, but they will do what happened in the Philippines under Duterte. There will be, let's talk about the United States. You're already seeing the compromises made, right? Because of corporate interests. It's the medium-sized, independent news organizations that will collapse. So you got to move. There's got to be radical collaboration, and we need to create. You know, in Southeast Asia, I tracked the way the virulent ideology of terrorism, Al-Qaeda-linked terrorist networks in Southeast Asia. This was my beat. My second book, From Bin Laden to Facebook. We see the way the virulent ideology infected young Indonesian men, because that was the Bali bombing. Now to see that same tactic deployed to the public is incredibly disheartening, because these companies are doing it for profit. We are radicalizing the population. And that's the world we're living in. Right? It's the reason why we're living in a world on fire. And tech plays a major role in this. This is part of the tech that is addictive to us by design, encourages the worst of humanity. If you lace a lie with fear, anger, and hate, it spreads faster by design. That isn't people. That's, the tech companies will say, oh, well, it's the people themselves. That's not true. It's like you have a devil and angel on your shoulder. Here's the angel telling you, do the right thing, do the right thing. It's always a fight for your own conscience. And the devil is telling you, no, do that. You're going to get this. You're going to get this. Well, what tech did is knocked the angel off your shoulder and grew the devil and gave it a direct line into your nervous system. Now you add generative AI, and it's significantly worse. We are facing an epidemic of loneliness. We are seeing kids. I was just with a mother, Megan Garcia, whose son at 14 years old committed suicide, and she discovered that he had been pushed. He was thinking about this with a chatbot. This is dangerous. So that goes right back. Whose responsibility is that? The legislatures of democratic states, the big tech companies who should have enlightened self-interest, and us, the citizens. We need to reclaim our rights. We need to demand better. Now is the time to act. That is radical collaboration. In Rappler, from the very beginning, we looked at three kind of pillars, right? That's journalism, technology, and community. And in each one of those, as technology has been weaponized against us, actually, the right way is to look at technology as the most predatory, and it takes our data and commodifying humanity. And it's on the side, it's pushing the worst of what human beings can be. And it's not just personal. It is also at a societal level. The Solomon Asch studies were all the way from the 60s, and they showed us that when we behave When we're in groups, we act differently. And now you're talking about humanity at scale. This is kind of, how is it changing our species type questions, which we journalists should be at the forefront attacking. We can't be passive. We can't just use this and assume it's doing the right thing because it's not, right? That's the challenge for journalists today. So radical collaboration means the type of journalism. Stop fanboy or fangirling over the tech. The tech is there. Yes, we now have the power of gods in the hands of men who are running after profit. We need the wisdom of gods. And in many ways, that's what journalists bring in because it's accountability. The second, so the form of journalism can change, the substance should not, but the distribution, and this goes down to the community. What communities are we building? How? How do you get your news to to your community? That's the tech. And if you're marginalized in any way in the real world, you are marginalized further online. So our biggest problem today is to demand better, to demand accountability from big tech. And we in Rappler, about 3 years ago, we decided that I was tired of begging the CEOs of big tech companies to actually prioritize facts, journalism, the public interest. They can't make money from the public interest, so they don't. So that is up to us. How do we do it? The first is get a tech stack that doesn't manipulate you. I was tired of waiting for governments to build it. Finally, European governments are starting to talk about digital sovereignty. But in the interim, because we have to live in this system, we built the Matrix Protocol chat app, and we've asked other news groups to join us there. I think what we are also living through is a fundamental disruption, an upside down of the internet as we know it, right? Especially, so look, there are only 3 ways a news site gets traffic: direct, social, or search. Social, Facebook being the largest funnel distributor of news, began choking traffic to news groups as early as 2018 after the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Slovakia would have known this, right? The Philippines felt it. But really, actively in 2024, it literally killed fact-checking in the United States, and we still have fact-checking in other parts of the world, but it walked away from some of the kinds of safety measures it had put in place. So you see, they are literally choking traffic to news. So that's a drop of anywhere from 35% to 75%, depending on where you are in the world. The third, and this began in May 2023, Google began rolling out something it called Search Generative Experience in 125 countries. And then it rolled it out formally right before US elections in May 2024. What does that mean? When you search now, right, you're not going to get the link to the websites. You're going to get AI telling you the answers. And that means that no one will come to your website, right? So what does that mean? A drop of anywhere from 35 to 55%, right? Depending on where you are in the country. Some in the West have shown larger drops. So search is gone or shifting. There's no more social traffic that is coming your way in the same way. So what do? We saw this coming because we've been keeping close watch. And 3 or 4 years ago, we just began building tech. I tried Mastodon, cannot. It's oftentimes when people say open source, like Mastodon, it's just too clunky and too unwieldy. So we looked at what existed. There's something called the Matrix Protocol. All French government and German government websites are on the Matrix Protocol. It's open source, end-to-end encrypted, and decentralized. So you protect your community in it. And what we did was we took the open source code and just built it as a login, right? So any news group now, you have a login, we can bring your community into the Matrix Protocol. And when that happens, we're connected, but the people aren't insidiously manipulated by algorithms? Well, you could get bored. That's the danger, right? Because you're not getting fed toxic. You're not addicted. Guess what? The shittification of the internet is such full steam ahead. There's so much fraud and scams on it that people are coming to the Matrix Protocol chat app. That's how we build our communities of action. And I think the best part, our reporters, our editorial team are literally rebuilding trust, right? Facts, truth, trust, and a shared reality. That's important. That's critical. That's what you get. And for news groups around the world, before you lose all your power, join us. I think the first step is gather your courage, right? This is it. And there's no time to waste feeling lonely because you're not alone. Find and build your community. 2. 3, embrace your fear. You're meant to feel afraid. Fear is real, and it works. Duterte did it by killing people, right? That's why he's now on trial at The Hague for crimes against humanity, a brutal drug war. He took wealth away. He jailed our senator for 7 years. And, while they were trumped up charges, she still lost almost 7 years of her life. Think of the very worst thing you can be afraid of, and then do what we did at Rappler. We workflowed it so that when you take the sting out of the fear, then you keep doing your job. If you don't, this will set the next decade. I mean, hand in hand with climate change, which a leader has called a hoax at the UN, right? Climate change is existential. So without journalism, without accountability, that will get worse. If you care about journalism, about democracy, about the values that hold us together, gather yourself, gather your community. Because I guess this is the key part. This moment will define who you are, right? You don't know who you are until you're really tested. And I think, ironically, the next one, Gen Z, is living with it and trying to conquer it. And we started saying it's a fragile generation because it's insidiously manipulative, right? This is part of what's killing our democracy. But the younger ones coming up, Alpha, are aware of the dangers far more than Gen Z and above. They're staying away from their phones. They're getting phones that aren't connected. It's so interesting to me that Silicon Valley CEOs don't give their tech to their kids. I think that's the test.